Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission tonight. I appreciate your input and your presence here. My name is Clay Alsop, and I'd like to open with an opening statement. Now that I think about it, are we still doing our COVID opening statement?
I think it's the same. Should be the same one you have, because all those other methods to participate are still available.
Okay, I will still read it as it was then. The Planning and Zoning Commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria. The Commission holds public hearings or may conduct a study session on a topic. Decisions made by the Commission on general plan amendments, rezonings, and text amendments are forwarded as written recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will consider the recommendation of the Commission and make the final determination. City Council may concur with the decision, modify, or overturn it, or remand it back to the Commission for further consideration. For conditional use permit applications, the Planning and Zoning Commission will act as the determining body and may approve, deny, or continue the application. Any member of the public may appeal the decision of the Commission to the City Council regarding a conditional use permit. The appeal must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development within 15 days of the date of the Commission's decision. As Arizona and Peoria continue to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, tonight's meeting is being conducted using measures to protect the health, safety of the public, while discussions, deliberations, and actions of the Planning and Zoning Commission remain transparent. To ensure the health and safety of those attending tonight's meetings, members of the public are required to wear facial coverings and social distance while inside City Council chambers. I suppose that's as per CDC guidelines, current CDC guidelines. I'm going to modify that. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting remotely may do so by viewing a live stream broadcast on Facebook at facebook.com/City of Peoria AZ, as well as on the Digital Peoria channel on YouTube. The meeting is also broadcast on Cox Channel 11 and CenturyLink Channel 8509. Additionally, the posted agenda online invited citizens with comments or questions on any agenda item to submit those by 6 p.m. in advance of the meeting. If you have comments or questions following tonight's meeting, you may submit those to the Planning Department by emailing planning@peoriaaz.gov. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the Commission will adhere to the following steps during tonight's meeting. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced. Chair will open the case. City staff will then provide a brief report and recommendation. The applicant is then invited to give a presentation. Then the chair will read the submitted testimony provided by the public in advance of the meeting. After all the testimony has been taken, we will invite the applicant back up to provide any rebuttal or final statements. Finally, we will have commission discussion and decision. That concludes our opening statement. Let's begin tonight with a roll call. Commissioners, please indicate your presence after I call your name. Commissioner Tony Fighter. Commissioner Fighter is not present. Commissioner Linda Grice.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Brad Schaefer is not present. And Commissioner Josephine Waitman.
Present.
Thank you, and Chair is present. This is the final call for speaker request forms. If you would like to address the commission tonight, please fill out a speaker request form. We have them available just outside the entrance to the chambers and up front at the podium. Next is the consent agenda. Consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature. There are 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. Item 1C, disposition of absence, and 2C, minutes from the June 17 meeting. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the consent agenda tonight? Do we have a motion?
Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Thank you. Commissioners, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We have one item on our regular agenda tonight. Item 3R, converge at P83, PAD rezone. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Cody Gleason, Principal Planner with the City of Peoria Planning Department. As referenced, the case in front of you is Z20-09 for Converge at P83. The applicant, Ben Tate with Withy Morris, is representing Sub 4 development for the southwest corner of 75th Avenue and Paradise Lane. The site is approximately 4 acres gross, about 3 acres net once you take into account dedications. This proposal would be a rezone from the existing Marriott Town Place PAD that is currently the entitlement for the site to a new PAD for Converge at P83. That proposal is for a vertical mixed-use development containing 195 multifamily residential units in a 5-story mixed-use building, as well as a ground floor retail component. So as I had referenced, the current entitlement for the site is for Marriott Town Place PAD. Some of you may remember when that case came in about 2018. It was for a 4-story dual format hotel on the subject site. This proposal would be a new PAD in order to allow multifamily as well as a mixture of non-residential uses. So those uses, just to give you a general idea here, include things like professional medical office, gyms, and bar or lounge. That previous hotel did allow for an accessory bar/lounge as a component of the hotel use. So as you can see, this site has some unique surrounding characteristics to it. To the immediate north, you have Paradise Lane, followed by a small commercial center, which is anchored by Osso Restaurant. And then to the west, you have Skunk Creek, and followed by Stadium View Apartments. Those are 3-story townhome apartments just to the west of Skunk Creek. South of this site, you have the AC/DC Canal, which once you take into account the canal and then a trail open space on the south side of the canal, it's about 500 plus feet from the subject site to the single-family residential homes that follow that. Adjacent to the homes there, you'll see a mini storage facility that lines 75th Avenue. To the east of this site is the Paradise at P83, another recent case for the area. So that is a 4-story apartment complex with approximately 300 plus multifamily units. So just to give you a quick overview of kind of what would be entailed within this site. Again, being a vertical mixed-use site, the ground floor would have a little bit different format than the upper floors to include that ground floor retail at the hard corner there, followed by multifamily components for the remainder of the site. And then the box that you see there in gray is actually a parking garage that would facilitate parking for the multifamily primarily. The retail would primarily use the surface parking that you see at the west end of the site. So this project actually presents several firsts for Peoria. The main one of which being vertical mixed use. P83 is defined as an area that we're looking for lively entertainment, that urban form and construction, and really a mixture of uses and density that allows for the entire P83 area to kind of feed off each other. So with that, this development proposes some unique elements that we have not yet seen within the city of Peoria. One of which being the amenities for this development. Those include 2 fifth-floor decks or balconies for the residents of the community, one of which would be at the southwest corner of the site, which would actually allow views into Peoria Sports Complex, and then the other of which would be at the northeast corner of the site, so on the 5th floor above the retail, allowing for, again, that urban experience to look out over the intersection and see the form of the area that P83 has begun to take. In addition to that, Peoria, as much as we are looking to fight that trend, is somewhat of a bedroom community, so parking garages are a bit of a rarity for us. We don't actually have a parking garage over 2 stories in the city. This would incorporate parking into the development, and not only that, but it would integrate the parking garage into the design of the building. So instead of just the typical formed concrete deck layers that you see in a typical parking garage, they're actually looking to tie it into the rest of the building and have that aesthetic design complement throughout the development. Here you see somewhat of a perspective view of the development. The idea behind those mixed-use developments and having that ground floor retail is that you really provide an opportunity for residents to not only live at a location, but utilize regional amenities, which we'll get to in subsequent slides, but also gain services and or goods from the location that they live at. So whether that is a retail convenience store at the base of the building or a medical office, it provides opportunity for residents to actually live, work, and play in the same location without having to travel off-site. Again, that goes to the intent of the P83 area and building on those synergies that you're able to not have to get in a car and travel in order to reach goods or services and or amenities for the area. So here we have the general plan on the left-hand side of the screen and the zoning map on the right. As you can see, this is within the mixed-use community district. So if you were to take a map of all of P83, you would actually see that designation over the entire area. The idea behind that being that we want these uses to build off of each other. We want it to integrate with the rest of the P83 development and provide an opportunity for interactions between the uses. As you can see in the zoning map, and as I had referenced, this site is currently zoned PAD. Initially, it was rezoned from a PI1 zoning district in 2008 into a PAD that allowed for a mix of non-residential uses, the heights of which reached 60 feet in the proposed entitlement at that time, and then it allowed an additional 10 feet for items such as mechanical equipment, so an overall height of 70 feet. The Marriott Hotel, which is the current entitlement for the site, was again zoned in 2018. That those development standards incorporated a maximum height of 65 feet, so it lowered the height a total of 5 feet, but it incorporated anything on the roof, so it didn't have that extra exception for mechanical equipment. When you're looking at rezoning, what we always have to look at is the general plan. Does this meet the general plan intent? Is it achieving goals and policies for the area? I apologize, I'll take a drink here. If it is residential, is it in alignment with the densities that are provided for within that land use category? In this case, mixed-use community district is our highest intensity mixed-use land use designation. So it is looking for those high-intensity centers where you have that urban form and you're able to take advantage of services as well as residential units that, again, provide that proximity to each other. It does envision, according to the general plan, tall buildings pulled to the street, which, as you'll see as we move forward, is what this development is proposing to do through not only building height, but setbacks and building orientation. The general plan also for this land use designation calls specifically for parking to occur behind buildings or in wrapped parking structures, as well as densities in excess of 20 dwelling units per acre. So the proposal that you have before you is approximately 46.6 dwelling units per acre. So it achieves that desired multifamily density for the site. Here's just a small list of goals and policies within the general plan that this development seeks to achieve, providing that balance of land uses, providing connected corridors, which we'll get to in a minute with respect to trail connections for pedestrians, bicyclists, and then the obvious vehicular connections. This is an infill site, as we had referenced at the context slide. Everything around this is currently developed and or under construction. So this is one of the few remaining sites that we have left in P83. And the way that the development standards have been fashioned are in order to create that pedestrian environment, that easy walkability, the bike routes or access routes to those regional trail systems. So the image that you see on the right of the screen here is actually from the Sports Complex Urban Design Plan. That plan was approved by council in 2010. It's probably a little bit hard to see, but the subject site in this case is where you see kind of that V-shaped park channel. It's just to the right of that V. So it's in the area designated as quote-unquote East End. The Sports Complex Urban Design Plan kind of mapped out before we called it P83 what P83 was. So it gave us the boundaries and kind of form and character that we should be looking for in this area. It also provided some preferred design concepts, which we'll get to in the next slide here. So each of these areas that you see labeled in different colors and actual naming designations provides a specific character that is intended for that area. So for instance, in the case of East End, which is where the subject site is located, it calls for buildings up to 10 stories. It calls for maximum setbacks instead of minimum setbacks. Usually in development, what we're looking at is providing protections due to adjacent land uses. In this case, you have that AC/DC channel to the south, which is approximately 500 feet. To the west, you have Skunk Creek, which is about 180 feet, I believe, from the existing Stadium View apartments or townhomes to the subject site. And then you have commercial to the north and multifamily to the east. So it's looking to drive that urban form into this area specifically. It also calls for a trailhead for Skunk Creek, which once we get into the amenities of the area, you'll see is being provided by the proposed development along the south side, as well as connections to that trail. And it recommends several uses for the east end and the remainder of the sports complex urban design plan, which we now all know as P83. So it calls for uses such as multifamily, live-work units, and office. So here you can see the proposed standards for the site. What we did here is just provide some context with respect to what you would typically see in a commercial development. Our most common commercial zoning designation is C2. So that calls for a maximum height of 48 feet. However, as you can see, the current PAD, does allow for 65 feet. And again, drawing back to that sports complex urban design plan, which calls for up to 10 stories, this PAD is trying to achieve that urban form through the increased height. I will note that the proposed elevations for the site plan that we currently have under review, which is separate from the zoning case that you're hearing now, the elevations on that are 71 feet rather than the proposed 80-foot allowance. So it's under that maximum threshold that's identified here. And the height from 60 feet to 71 feet is exclusively for building form, and we'll get into some images of the architecture, but again, trying to create that distinct architectural embellishment or feature for the area. So as far as parking, as referenced with respect to the specificity in the general plan regarding parking structures, the goal for this site is to capture that urban form. And as you can see here, the attempt is to integrate that parking structure into the building. You're obviously going to have some limitations with regard to what can be done with a parking structure. So what they've tried to do is tie some thematic elements throughout this component of the development, as well as provide some screening so that though they have architectural features that are on the building, you're also not just looking at cars through there. So it's an attempt to screen what that parking garage contains as well. The only modifications to the actual parking standards that are proposed by this development are to provide a set ratio for the non-residential parking standards. The reason for that is with a mixed-use development, you may have one tenant that is in and operating, they choose to move. You have a different use that comes in. It's hard to create parking after the fact for a development. So what they've done here is actually choose a ratio that's slightly higher, so requires a bit more parking than our typical commercial or retail parking designation. So our typical designation is 1 to 250 or 1 to 300 per square foot of the space. What they're proposing is 1 to 200 square feet. So again, providing a little bit more parking for that non-residential component of the use. The other modification with respect to parking is the actual stall dimensions. When you get into more urban areas, I'm sure everyone has had the experience, going to Phoenix in a baseball game or the basketball game. I'm sure everyone's has tickets for right now, but you often find modified stall dimensions within those parking structures. The reason for that is you have to account for the ramps, you have to account for the pillars, so that's the other modification that's been made to the parking standards for this. And as you can see here, this is just an enlargement of that screening element that again ties in that wood look in an attempt to try and soften the architecture of without that, what would otherwise be just a concrete structure. So as you can see here, here are some of the ground floor amenities. And you can see there in what was supposed to be represented in gold is the retail at the corner. And then in blue, you'll see the ground floor amenities. So a bike room within the parking garage, again, trying to focus on that pedestrian or non-vehicular environment. The pool and deck area. And at the south end, it's probably too small to see, but that's the location for the Skunk Creek Trailhead amenity area. So in that area, you'll see some text there with a call-out arrow. That is a bike station, water fountain. The idea there is, you know, they're not just constructing for residents. The idea is to integrate it within the surrounding opportunities for the site. So as we'll see in some subsequent slides, immediately south of here is a future trail connection. Along the street frontage, as I had referenced, the effort was to pull this building towards the street so you have that urban environment. At the same time, they wanted to integrate opportunities for not only shade, but gathering areas. So you can see the large blue kind of trapezoid there represents a plaza, and that would just be open to the public and provide that inviting environment off of the trail. And we'll get to the next slide here, but Paradise Lane, the sidewalk for that is actually going to be expanded to a larger width to accommodate a quote-unquote multi-use pathway. So here you can see just some of the amenities that are provided within the proposed development. Typically in a development of this size, the requirement would be for 5 amenities. What we do is we base the required number of amenities on the number of units that are within a multifamily development. The hope is that we are able to achieve a certain amenity package or ratio for residents. You know, the more residents that you have, the more amenities that you're able to provide within the development. So I think I've probably touched on most of these. They're also providing a clubhouse, fitness area. There's an entry lounge actually on the parking garage. The upper floor of it will contain a dog wash and dog run. So even in that urban environment provides an opportunity to be outside and yet still have your closest friend with you. So what you see here is an image of the 5th floor. So kind of in the middle, that green space, that's the dog wash, dog run area that I was referencing. That's about 600 plus square feet. To the southwest is the ballpark deck. The reference for that is the visibility into the sports complex from this area. That was the purpose of the location, is they would be able to have a unique element that's not present anywhere else in the city. There's also a similar feature, as I referenced, at the northeast corner. In addition to the exterior deck at the northeast corner, there's a lounge that wraps that deck. So provides the views, but without having to sit out in 115-degree heat. And then I referenced the dog wash, dog run there. In addition to communal open space and amenities, one of the items that we look at when evaluating a development is the private open space element. So are residents able to, you know, do something, be outside without having to be within their residence at all times? We have certain standards for what the actual size of that needs to be. So with regard to ground floor units in our design review manual, we call for about 113 square feet of private open space per unit. And then for upper floor units, we call for about 50 square feet of outdoor space or balcony space. This proposal would incorporate a requirement that 90% of all units, regardless of location, would have to achieve 100 square feet. So about double what the typical requirement is for upper floor units. And then 10% of all units would be allowed to be 50 square feet, so the typical balcony that you would see in any other multifamily development within the city. What this actually equates to is about a 58.5% increase in private required open space. So going beyond what would otherwise be required for that private open space element. As far as common open space, when you get into the urban form, it is a little bit more difficult to provide those larger open space areas. So in order to accommodate for that, they've tried to elevate the private open space in place of what would otherwise be required for the common open space. So what you have here is a ratio that is 50 square feet per bedroom rather than the 150 square feet per bedroom. The reason for that is with a development like this, the general plan calling for that higher intensity, it's hard to achieve what ends up being about an acre of common open space in a 3.3 acre site. So that's the reason for that trade-off there. Again, the other component to that is providing double what would otherwise be required as far as the number of amenities for the site. And with that, trying to achieve a uniqueness to those amenities, those fifth floor elements that provide views that you wouldn't otherwise have in other locations. So here is the plan that I was referencing with respect to trail connections and access. Along Paradise Lane there, you'll see in orange, and then along 75th Avenue in orange, those are the vehicular access opportunities and connections. At the actual intersection of Paradise Lane and 75th Avenue, it is a signalized intersection. And then the areas that you see in green lines and arrows, those are trails. So with this development, they would be required to provide a 10-foot sidewalk, which is in excess of our typical requirement. The reason for that is to accommodate trail connections. Along what ends up being the east side of the Stadium View apartments that are on the other side of Skunk Creek, there is an existing trail connection that goes from the Skunk Creek channel up to Paradise Lane. The idea with this is they are then continuing that connection from Paradise Lane down to 75th. What you see in blue here is a future trail connection. And you can see the image of a bridge there. That is a future pedestrian bridge that would connect across Skunk Creek. So then individuals wouldn't even need to go out to Paradise Lane. That bridge is a part of a city project that is currently in the design phase, so we don't have a final design of it yet. As a result, what the applicant has tried to do is accommodate stubs, so you'll see those shortened green arrows on the southern end of the site, providing stubs so that in the future it can connect to that future trail connection. And that trail connection actually will provide access not just within Peoria, but that trail continues on all the way to the East Valley, so you can access places such as Phoenix, Glendale, Scottsdale, all through this one trail system. What you see here is an image from the traffic impact analysis, and I have Brandon Foray here, the Assistant City Traffic Engineer. He is much smarter than I and can probably provide quite a bit more detail as far as the actual traffic counts and information. But as far as trip generation, it is a relatively lower traffic generator than the comparable commercial-only development. So the Marriott Hotel that is currently entitled on the site would actually generate more trips than the proposed development. You can see 68 AM peak hour trips, 93 PM peak hour trips. In the analysis of the traffic that would be generated as a result of this site, it was found that both Paradise Lane as well as 75th Avenue would maintain acceptable levels of service for the vehicular traffic on both of those streets subsequent to this development. As far as lane modifications, this site would be making a modification to Paradise Lane. So when heading eastbound and attempting to turn southbound on 75th Avenue, it would actually provide a separate right turn lane in order to turn southbound on 75th. And that's to allow easier conveyance of vehicles. Folks aren't stopped in the through movement waiting for other individuals to turn right. In addition to that, there would be a modification to allow for a westbound to southbound left into the site from Paradise Lane. So the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting in accordance with city requirements. That meeting was held on May 17th. It was held in a virtual format. There was approximately 3 attendees logged in to the meeting. I will note that one of the attendees identified that they did have multiple residents participating with them at their home in the virtual meeting. Concerns at that time centered on impacts as a result of traffic generation, the height of the building, the product type as far as rental versus ownership. There was a couple of statements with respect to it would be a higher desire to have it as an ownership product rather than a rental unit. Staff and zoning standards do not allow us to evaluate that question as a part of our use designation. So we evaluate it as to what the actual use is. If there are multiple units, it doesn't matter if it is a rental product or an ownership product, it's all evaluated the same. As far as citizen comment, subsequent to the issuance of the Planning and Zoning Commission packet, 3 letters of opposition were received, and you should have received copies of those prior to this meeting, as well as 2 letters of support. And I apologize, that should be 2 letters of support provided on there. 2 of the 3 letters of opposition were from residents that attended the neighborhood meeting. And those letters of opposition largely identified the same concerns that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting from the residents. As far as notification, as would typically occur with a rezoning case, notification was sent out to all property owners within 600 feet and all HOAs within 1 mile. The site was also posted with a sign, and an ad was placed in the paper in accordance with the zoning ordinance standards. As a result, staff finds that the density range provided for the proposed development is in alignment with the general plan land use designation of community, mixed-use community district, the actual density being 46.65. The proposed mixed use is directly in alignment with not only the vision identified in the general plan, but also the site-specific information in the more detailed sports complex urban design plan for this site. The proposal would function as a catalyst to delineate the desired urban form within the city. that has been envisioned both within the general plan and within the sports complex urban design plan since the adoption of that 2010 plan. As a result, staff recommends approval of case Z20-09 to City Council, subject to the attached conditions of approval in Exhibit 1 in the staff report. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Cody. Appreciate it. Very thorough. Do we have any questions from any commissioners? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chairman. Just some clarifying questions. So talk to me about the height issue. That seems to be a concern with residents, and I want to kind of shake that out a little bit. So would the height of the occupied hotel rooms, are you saying it would be, in effect, to be lower than these occupied rental units because of the architectural elements that are going to be above the apartments?
It would largely be very similar.
Similar, okay.
Yeah, so the 4 stories of the hotel went up to 65 feet. It had some similar architectural elements. That's why with the proposed elevations for the subject site, it's only actually going up to 71 feet. You know, a bit of, what is that, 6-foot difference. So the idea there, and the highest point of that is at the northeast corner, so that signalized intersection rather than the southwest corner.
Gotcha. And then second question, if I may, Chair. I need some perspective on the traffic generated by this development. So you provided a slide earlier saying the AM and PM traffic. In relation to what? How much traffic do we see? And maybe this is a question for Mr. Foray, but how much traffic do we see on 75th Avenue during those peak times?
Chairman, Commissioner Nelson, I'll defer that to Brandon.
Yes, Chairman Alsop and Commissioner Nelson. I don't actually have the peak hour volume. I do know that 75th Avenue, based on some data collected earlier this year, we have 22,000 vehicles per day, which may sound like a lot, but is actually not extraordinary for a 4-lane facility like 75th Avenue. Paradise itself has 6,000 vehicles a day, which is up from the previous count. So we see more activity there. But typically, when a site generates fewer than 100 AM or PM peak hour trips, a lot of times we do not even require those developments to provide traffic studies because the impact is low enough where it's not a significant impact. However, for this particular site, we wanted to take a closer look, particularly because there was access onto 75th Avenue. Any arterial access is always a point that could be a concern. Our main concern has to do with the delay at the intersection or at the driveway, and that's measured in something called level of service. So we have a required level of service, and we wanted to make sure each of those movements did meet the city's minimum level of service requirements. Otherwise, if they had not, we would have required restrictions, either restricting the left out movement or possibly even the left in. In this particular case, the analysis showed that the delays did not exceed our thresholds, so we felt comfortable allowing full access at the 75th Avenue driveway.
If I may I ask a follow-up question? So the hotel that was going to go there previously, or I guess that is currently zoned for it, what was the traffic generation for the hotel? Do we get number? Did they do a traffic study? I can't recall.
We did. In fact, the same traffic engineer had prepared the study for the hotel prior. And generally speaking, the trip generation from the hotel in the AM peak was approximately 50% greater, and in the it was double the traffic during the AM peak, and approximately 50% greater in the PM peak.
I'm sorry, say that again. 50% greater during peak hours, 100% greater.
During the AM peak. Yeah, there would be
I'm sorry, I got you. Okay.
Twice the traffic generation in the morning and 50% greater in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Peak. Yes.
Okay. All right.
And just as a general comparison, if the site were through a really rough analysis, If the entire site were to be commercial, assuming 1 story, we estimate there would be approximately 3 times the traffic during that PM peak, just for a point of reference.
Sure. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Waitman?
Yes, I do want some clarification once again, as I'm looking over some of the complaints. I think congestion is the main part, right? And privacy. So I am thinking back, maybe this is jumping too far ahead, but our last commission meeting, we did have your fellow city traffic engineer, Chris Lempa, go over some adaptive signal control technology that possibly far future would be used in the higher congested areas. So on 75th and I guess on 75th and I guess the turning points that we're speaking about, is this already installed? Is this technology already present?
Sure. Commission members. Adaptive technology is kind of the pinnacle of ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems. We don't currently have it down the 75th Avenue corridor. However, we have an extensive network of CCTV cameras so we can monitor the operations of our traffic signals, and we have video detection at almost all of our traffic signals now, so we're able to make real-time changes to adjust the operation of a signal on a case-by-case basis. And if we notice there are concerns in the operation, greater delays at 75th Avenue and Paradise, for example, we have the ability to make fine-tune adjustments to hold the light green longer for Paradise at specific times or under specific criteria. And it's something that's relatively simple, and we've done to great effect throughout Peoria. So if there are operational concerns at this intersection, we do have a lot of opportunities with very low-cost, medium tech options to make some adjustments and corrections.
Perfect, thank you. I just want to clarify, as I see that they did look at this with their Southwest traffic engineer, and I think in partnership with our city. So from what I'm getting in clarification, that if this is more congested than we have populated, the city is able to get involved and make sure and assure residents that we're going to be able to, there's still going to be traffic and lights and turning signals, but basically to make the process a bit smoother, correct? And we will get involved.
Absolutely. Once a project is completed, we are here for maintenance on an ongoing basis. We receive resident requests routinely and are able to make adjustments at a pretty impressive turnaround time. So that is something that's always available. Staff is available for those adjustments, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
I just had I just want to clarify too, and I know one of the other commissioners just asked. So could you tell me the overall height of the hotel versus the overall height of this apartment complex?
So the overall height allowance for the hotel was 65 feet. They were intending to be right about at that when they went through with their site plan. So it was at, I want to say about 63 feet or so. The proposed development proposes a standard of 80 feet. However, with the site plan materials that they have under review currently, it's only a maximum of 71 feet, and that is to the peak of the building at the northeast corner. So let me see if I can get you back to a rendering here to display that. Maybe. Here we go. So at that corner of the intersection, you see that kind of platform roof element that actually arcs up to the northeast. So that is the highest point of the building. The actual residential units, the roof line of those is at about 60 feet.
Okay, so it was a 4-story hotel at 65 versus a 5-story apartment at 70-ish.
About 71, that's correct.
And has it been discussed, or has it been thought about the possibility of that entrance on that dumps out onto 75th Avenue. What's the chances of getting that, like, just fire department access only and have all the traffic generated through like a main entrance that goes down to Paradise to kind of relieve, the left and right out of that 75th Avenue access point?
The traffic Chairman, Commissioner Hutchinson, the traffic generation and analysis that Brandon had referenced is based on the current configuration of the site. So providing the trips onto 75th Avenue as it is an arterial and it's intended to take those higher volumes of vehicles, forcing it all onto Paradise would likely disrupt traffic flows on Paradise in a manner that we wouldn't be able to know without studying it.
Okay.
If I could add just a little bit more, is not to say, just for additional clarification, it would add extra pressure, a greater number of trips onto Paradise, but even as such, it wouldn't be an overbearing number of trips, but because access onto the arterial for such a use is preferred and because it met the appropriate level of service, there was no reason to restrict any of those movements at that access point.
Just seems like Paradise is such a less used, roadway. I mean, very few people go in and out of Paradise, and then all of the traffic in and out of the development would be signalized, via the 75th Avenue and Paradise Lane. It's just, I could see the concern for, the added traffic and being in such close proximity to the, I think that was, I forget the name of the Tierra Bueno.
Tierra Buena Vista?
That one, yeah. That street, the close proximity to traffic coming in and out of there. Just a thought, if there's a way to, make this work for everybody, but appreciate that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments, Commission? With that, I'll open up the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Benjamin Tate with Withy Morris, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle, on behalf of the applicant. In this case, which is sub 4 development, we're here requesting respectfully your approval or recommendation of approval for Converge at P83, which is in the P83 district within the city of Peoria. If we can go to the next slide. So I'll try and be brief here. One of the things I enjoy about working with Cody is how incredibly thorough he is. And as a result of that, a lot of this will just be repeating things that Cody's already said. So I'll try and touch on the things that we think are worth highlighting. The first thing I will say, and as we can go to the next slide here, as Cody highlighted, we are providing precisely the kind of development that the city of Peoria is looking for at this site, both in the general plan and the Peoria Sports Complex urban design plan. And we used those documents as the sort of the guideposts for how we were developing this site. When Sub 4 came to us and was looking at this site, it hadn't really been baked at that point yet, and so we, with them, helped look through ideas and look through the general plan and look through the Peoria Sports Complex urban design plan to not only figure out what made sense for this site, but what, based on the documents that have been adopted by the City of Peoria City Council, what the city is asking for at this site. And so we were focused on not only meeting those policy goals, but actually exceeding them in many respects. And so, as Cody mentioned, the site's about 4 gross acres, just over that. It's in the east end of the Peoria Sports Complex urban design plan, which calls for mixed-use residential at this site and encourages heights up to 10 stories. And in fact, we're only asking for half of that. Very consistently with the other 2 developments that have been approved on this site going back to 2008. More importantly, it's also designated as mixed-use community district in the City of Peoria's general plan, which, as Cody mentioned, is the most intense district and land use designation in the City of Peoria. But we are not taking advantage of all of the density or all of the intensity that this site encourages, because in addition to looking at what the city is asking for, we're also looking at what makes sense and what's appropriate for the site. And what's appropriate for the site is exactly what we're proposing here. If we can go to the next slide. So the other two developments, as I mentioned, that have been approved at this site, going back to 2007. The first was Paradiso PAD, which was a mixed-use office development that had a maximum height of 60 feet. And then more recently, right around 2018, the Marriott Town Place PAD, which was up to 65 feet with a dual-flagged hotel development. And as you can see from these elevations, compared to what we'll be showing you in a minute, it's very consistent with what's already been proposed on this site. If we can go to the next slide. So what are we proposing? We are proposing Convergent PAD3, which is a mixed-use multifamily residential development. As Cody mentioned, it's 5 stories with a maximum height of 71 feet, although I think it's really important to note that when we're talking about the height of this development, relative to the height of other developments that have been approved, yes, it goes up to 71 feet, but where you see that height, and the only place you see that height, is that peak that's right there on the corner pointing towards the intersection. The actual roof line of 90 to 95% of the building is 60 feet, which is right in line with the other developments that have been approved at this site. We're proposing 2,000 square feet of ground floor retail space, the perfect amount of size for a coffee shop or a cafe or a small boutique. As Cody mentioned, it's structured or wrapped parking, so the building wraps around the parking structure, which can be entered on the south side, but is also screened with architectural materials to ensure that if you're on the south side of that development, you're not looking at a parking structure. You're looking at architectural materials that are in line with the rest of the building, that look just as good. We are proposing an enhanced streetscape also, as Cody mentioned, along 75th and along Paradise Lane that attaches down to the Skunk Creek Trail. It's a 10-foot multi-use path with very generous landscaping, mature shade trees to ensure that there's refuge during the doldrums of summer that we're in now. That includes some benches, some bike parking, and some mini plazas, and as we'll get to, and as Cody already went through, extensive community amenities as well. And in fact, amenities that were really thoughtfully designed and catered towards facilitating people taking advantage of more regional amenities, like the Skunk Creek Trail, like Peoria Sports Complex, and other things in this area that people can enjoy. If we can go to the next slide. So here's a look dead on. So if you were standing on the north side of Paradise Lane looking south back at the building, this is what you'd be looking at on that top side of the slide there. And as you can see, that call out on the left side of your screen is that top elevation of 71 feet, which is considerably higher than the rest of the building. If we can go to the next slide. So the top one there is if you're kind of standing on the southeast corner along 75th Avenue right there, looking back towards the building. You can see that the parking structure there that is been obscured and screened with some different screening materials. And I think, without even saying it, but I think it's worth repeating, the design team really knocked it out of the park with the design here. They spent an incredible amount of time making sure that this had the type of architectural interest that the city of Peoria deserves at this site. Because really, if you read the Peoria Sports Complex Urban Design Plan, what you'll find is that this site, in concert with the Opus development that's across the street, they really view this as sort of the bookend on the east side to the P83 district. And this is really a gateway to the rest of the P83 district and commands a degree of attention, a degree of architecture that's worthy of this site. And I think that we've done that. If we can go to the next slide. And this really gives you a sense of that architecture and the visual interest that it creates on that corner. So you'll have the retail space just off the corner there. Again, to be determined, but there are a number of very desirable retail and food and beverage uses that could go there. If we can go to the next slide. Here's a look at our landscape plan. So again, as you can see, very large mature trees planted along the perimeter, close on center to create a very green environment along with the architectural interest that we're creating. You can see the 10-foot multi-use path there, both along the north side and along the east side, connecting 75th Avenue, Paradise Lane, and then down to the trailhead. If we can go to the next slide. This is just a closer look at that amenity deck in the center of the site where the pool, outdoor kitchen, and some of the other resident amenities will be. One of the things that we're providing, which I think is a really neat feature, is down towards the bottom there. You see the striped part going across the driveway to the south. We will have a trailhead amenity, which will be an area for people to fill up their water bottles, to get a drink, to repair their bike, to lock up their bike. Just one additional thing for folks to be able to take advantage to use the Skunk Creek Trail and some of those surrounding regional amenities. If we can go to the next slide. Again, and this is just a closer look at that intersection at the hard southwest corner of 75th Avenue and Paradise Lane. Next slide. Amenities, I'll be quick because Cody's already gone through these, but we've really focused on enhancing the amenities within the development to make up for the lack of open space as a result of this being such a small site, and the city, more importantly, encouraging this kind of urban development. If we can go to the next slide. So building height, I'll touch on this very briefly again because I know we've kind of gone over it, but the previously approved hotel development was at 65 feet. Our proposed project is at 71 feet. But again, as you can see from the call out there on the bottom elevation, which is our proposed elevation, the vast majority, and in fact almost the entire building, is at 60 feet with only that corner architectural element, which is exactly the kind of architectural embellishment and thought that the city is encouraging at this site, is really the only part that goes above that. If we can go to the next slide. So this is a view if you were standing all the way on the other side of that wash. This is about 580 feet away from the site on the south side of the wash. As you can see, especially in relation to Paradise at P83, which is just to the east of us, there really is, at this distance, a marginal, if any, difference in the perceived height. If we can go to the next slide. So in summary, what we're requesting is a 195-unit mixed-use residential development with enhanced streetscape and an abundance of amenities, 2,000 square feet of ground floor retail space, and most importantly, and again, I think this bears repeating, consistent with all of the plans that the city of Peoria has for this particular area, and a housing inventory infusion and residential support for what's coming at this site. As you all know, Stadium Point is a very large commercial office development that's going to be right across from the Peoria Sports Complex that's coming within the next few years. That's going to generate thousands of jobs for the city of Peoria. And this type of luxury, high-quality multifamily residential development is the type of residential support that employers are looking for when they are looking to occupy those kinds of spaces. In the City of Phoenix metro area in April of this year, there was only a 3.3% vacancy rate for multifamily. There is an extraordinary deficit or lack of available multifamily inventory, especially high-quality multifamily inventory in the Phoenix metro area. That 3.8% number is going to be down to 3.3% by the end of this year. And so this is precisely the type of development that not only the city of Peoria needs, but the greater Phoenix metro area needs. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that additional information. Just a couple of clarifying questions. The name or the term luxury gets thrown around a lot, sometimes often undeservingly. Define for me what you mean by luxury residential community, whether that's in terms of the rental charges you anticipate. Talk a little bit more about what you mean by luxury. How luxurious is this?
Chairman, also Commissioner, sorry, I can't see your, Commissioner Nelson, I apologize. So it's within the industry, it's actually a fairly defined term. So this would, in developer speak, this would be a Class A multifamily residential development. And that speaks both to the level of architectural design, the amenities, but most importantly, the per square foot rents that will be expected and are pro forma at this site. So what we are looking at is an expected rent of around $1.90 per square foot, which boils down to about $1,900 to $2,200 per month for a unit.
Thank you, that's helpful. If I may ask a follow-up question. Did you attend the neighborhood meeting?
Yes, I hosted the neighborhood meeting.
Very good. Were there any concessions made in the design or anything in this project to appease some of the concerns that were raised by neighbors?
Chair, also Commissioner Nelson, the concerns that the neighbors had that were articulated in that meeting weren't the types of concerns that really lend themselves to concessions. And what I mean by that is they were fairly generalized concerns. It was concerns about traffic, it was concerns about height, and it was concerns about the product type. Those were really the main three things. So when we're talking about height, there's not really much we can do because this is a 5-story development, and we've brought it down to about the minimum that you can do for a 5-story development, which again is exactly consistent with the other developments that have been approved on the site. So there's not much we can really do on the way of height. As far as traffic is concerned, it generates what it generates. And as your traffic engineer pointed out, of the viable economic uses for this site, for whomever is going to develop this site, residential is about the lowest traffic generating use that you could put here that would be successful. As he mentioned, it was about twice the traffic in the AM, for the hotel, and about 50% greater in the PM. For commercial, it's 3 times that much traffic. So simply by virtue of the fact that this is a multifamily residential development, we're doing about as much as we can in the way of traffic. And as far as the product type, condos versus apartments, what the market is asking for right now is rentals. What the market is asking for is apartments, and that's what Sub4 builds. The Sub4 doesn't build condos. And so there's not much we can really do in that respect. If this were a more precise concern, whether it was about setbacks or the amount of landscaping or something like that, there might have been something for us to hold on to and maybe find somewhere to meet in the middle of the road. But as we move forward from this meeting into City Council, we'd be more than happy to continue to dialogue with those neighbors and see if there are things that we can do to lessen the perceived impact of the development.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Nelson. Any other commissioners? Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
We do have several speaker comment forms, and as I understand, some of these wish to speak and some wish to voice their opposition. I will read them off, and please feel free to come up to the dais, introduce yourself, your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will have a timer, and if you don't wish to speak and I call your name, you can just simply say where you're seated that you're opposed or you are in favor. We'll start with David Clark.
Good evening. My name is David Clark. I live on Lachlan Court, the 580 feet away from the, across the canal. Just a couple of things. First of all, I understand, by the way, that was a lovely building. I am, however, opposed to this, and the reason I am opposed to it, I understand when there are rules and regulations that are adopted, various different things that need to be met for this. It's fine when you're talking about them in theory. When you do it in practical terms, things start looking a little differently. The traffic issue is really my main concern because I drive out on Tierra Buena every morning. The traffic that comes down 75th Avenue is significant already when I'm leaving at before 7 o'clock in the morning. The issue is not just the traffic that comes from this particular development, but the traffic in the development across 75th Avenue from there, both of which will be dumping out onto 75th Avenue, and I would assume approximately the same time. You have already, by your lights, the traffic lights, shown that there's an issue here. You have a light at Paradise Lane, you have a light at Bell Road, you have a light a block north of there, and you have a light another block north of there. If you've ever driven down Bell Road, nobody likes that because of the amount of traffic that goes through there. 75th Avenue, because you have bridges over Skunk Creek and also over the canal, has 2 various different bridges which would make it impossible to broaden that street without incurring some incredible costs, and I don't think that's probably part of the plan. So I don't know about the numbers, and I certainly understand you have statistics with those things, but my view on that is what I see with my eyes. Last Christmas, during COVID, you had traffic backed up past both of the lights without either of those developments having people in them. That's my concern. That's why I'm concerned about all of this. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, appreciate it. Next will be Dave Evans.
Along with the Clarks, my wife and I are one of the 5 families directly south of this project. So it turns out that all 5 of us, all 5 families are opposed. 4 of us are here, and Gabe Gutierrez, who has young children, had planned to speak tonight, but he had a family conflict and he couldn't be here. So, okay, the things that I would like to share with you. I stood at my back door on the patio and looked across the back fence, and to the apartments to the west, I could see the windows of 2 of the 3 stories. So that means that those people could see into my windows in my house. And so this property that we're talking about is a good 5 or 6 feet higher than the property that those apartments is on. And so that means basically 4 out of the 5 stories are going to be able to look into the backyards of our houses. And again, we have 2 families with young children. So there's going to be a loss of privacy there. On the issue of traffic, that exit on 75th Avenue, when people go south from there, they don't have to go through the light. So that means that we could be having a steady, they add to the stream of traffic coming south, and we've had 2 new subdivisions in the area that exit onto Tierra Buena. So that means that when they avoid the light, that means that we're going to have a steady traffic stream coming. It's going to be difficult for us to merge, either to go south onto 75th or even worse, to make a left turn to go north on 75th. So there's an issue there with traffic. Okay, the property, as you probably are aware, has probably 2 or 3 feet of fill that came from the excavation of the channel originally, and also from the bridge on 75th Avenue. So when you build a 5-story, we put a 5-story building on there with 195 apartments and a parking garage that's probably going to hold around 230 cars, you're talking about a tremendous amount of weight on that piece of ground. I'm concerned that the city needs to verify the quality of evaluation of the stability of the ground. And okay, the last issue is with all the concentration of apartments there, it's a good long drive for anybody to get to a grocery store. And we don't feel that that's really the best use for, of having all of those apartments there, we don't feel it's the best use for that property. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Next is Al Holmes.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here. So we really want our neighborhood to be visually pleasing, but we also want it to be safe. And I don't know, we talked about traffic mitigation. However, let's talk about human behavior. People on 75th Avenue are just bad behavior. They don't ask me what it is. I want to beat the light. I'm in a hurry to get somewhere. I have a hard enough time getting onto 75th Avenue from Tierra Buena with the amount of traffic that has been generated lately. Now, you can put another 230 cars, no telling when they're going to come. But let's talk about those people exiting that facility on 75th Avenue, trying to get onto, get onto 75th Avenue and go southbound. And let's talk about the people that's coming, trying to make that light. That's about 150 yards. It takes 25 seconds, I'm sorry, it takes 1 second to travel 25 yards. That's at 50 miles an hour. Nobody drives at 50 miles an hour coming down south on 75th Avenue. Have you ever driven there? People are driving 60, 65 miles an hour down there, like it's a speedway. What we're going to do is we're going to make a situation where we have folks trying to get out of their apartment complex and somebody trying to beat the light. And that is a recipe for disaster. I think we should err to public safety on traffic that comes on and off of 75th Avenue at that planned site. And I don't want to shoot a dead horse, but I think safety should be one of our major concerns with this development. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have King Ruby.
Yes, my name is King Ruby. I live at 7628 West Lockline Court, directly across the canal. I have a history of civil structural engineering, but I'm not going to talk about those issues. You talk about the urban requirements of development. I moved to Peoria in 1989, primarily because of its rural environment, and have watched this city grow tremendously, including all of the city's offices and whatnot. A lot of good things. Some things have just been a course of time. What I want to talk about tonight is the number of rental units within a reasonable area of the proposed development without a whole lot of trouble in an area of less than 2.5 miles. I found over 30 multifamily residents located within this area of Peoria. In fact, 22 of those were multifamily. The other 8 were business office structures. Of those 22 multifamily units, 12 of them were 2-story and 10 of them were 3 stories. There were none over 3 stories. There was one office building that I found that was 4 stories, nothing in excess of 4 stories. And the tallest the hotel that I found in that area was 3 stories. And my question is there have been multiple proposals for development of this site. I'm not against the development of this site, but it should be in keeping with the area. You've got several very close proximities, less than a mile, of multifamily 3 stories. I don't really see the necessity of driving. In fact, I would argue that your number of 20 units per acre is actually closer to 70 per acre. If you do 190 units in a 3-acre area, I get closer to 60, 70 units per acre, not 90. So anyway, or not 20 rather. So anyway, my opposing is based on the number of apartment rentals that are in the area, as well as in the Phoenix area, the mean rental is $1.42 a square foot. $1.92, I'm not sure that this particular area can support that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Julia Smock.
Good evening. My name is Julia Smock. I am a Peoria resident. I live in Harmony Lane and currently serve as the chair of the Peoria Arts Commission. I am here tonight, though, speaking on behalf of Joan Evans, a former city council member and longtime Peoria resident, and you heard from her husband, Dave. They live on the street that's most affected by this. Joan cannot be here tonight because she fell and broke her hip. But this issue is so important to her that despite her injury, she wanted her voice to be heard. So I will tell you the points that she wanted me to raise for her. First concern is the exit on 75th Avenue that will result in restrictive flow and traffic safety issues, as you've heard a number of people already mention that tonight. Her second concern is that the issues that are due to the construction, prior construction of the AC/DC channel and the 75th Avenue Bridge, some of the property's dirt resulted from addition of landfill. It might not be safe to build the proposed project, and it is vital that due diligence is paid to this issue. Third, the area already has more than a significant number of apartments. The height of the apartments would cause a lack of privacy in backyards, and you've heard that from folks who live on Laughlin. The proposed landscaping does not match the plans for a P83 Stadium Point project. Eucalyptus trees are messy and dangerous during storms. And in Joan's opinion, a much better use of this land would be for businesses. For example, a Whole Foods or an AJ's Fine Foods would be a valued addition to the community, and those businesses would provide revenue to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Andy Beckert.
Hi, my name is Andy Bikert. I also live on Laughlin Court with many of these other neighbors. It's a quiet and quaint neighborhood. In the 18 years I've lived there, I've seen many parcels of land developed within a half a mile of me. 4 commercial developments, 7 housing developments, 4 which are high density, and 3 apartment complexes, 4 within a mile. So these apartment complexes that are already there, Arrowhead Landing Apartments, 328 units. The Enclave at Arrowhead, that's just up on Paradise, that's got 240 units. Stadium View Townhomes, 163 units. And in my opinion, the grossly misplaced Paradise Luxury Apartments, 4 stories, 354 units. So within 1 mile, you have 1,088 units. Now you're looking to add almost 200 more units right there. The development is 5 stories. Nothing in the area is 5 stories. Everything started out 2 stories, 3 stories. The Sopus development now is 4 stories. Now you're in 5 stories. What precedent is that going to set for, the remaining parcels? Okay. One other thing I wanted to say is the recently completed massive apartment complex, the P83 Luxury Apartments, to me is an eyesore. It does not match anything that is within the area. It's just a boxy style unit that looks like, I hate to say it, it looks like it's from a communist country. The worst thing is the workmanship on that building is horrible. I don't know if any of you have driven by it, but it has this gray tile siding that is crooked, not planar. I don't know who's on the architectural review board committees of these buildings or who's overseeing the quality of the workmanship, but it just does not look good. This building is the same style. It's a boxy building. Who knows what it's going to look like when it's done, okay? I'd like to say that until the city can get firm plans on a detailed quality product that fits within the area, do not approve it. The neighbors you have heard don't want it, okay? We would prefer a grocery store, a gas station. Do you know there's not a gas station on 75th Avenue from Cactus all the way to Deer Valley? That's 6 miles. You've got 1,000 units with a ton of residents. Put something there that these residents can go to, a grocery store or a gas station. This is the eastern entrance to the Peoria's P83 district. Approve something that is welcoming and an asset to the city. Save these high-rise apartments for the Peoria Sports Complex parking lot. We have plenty of apartments in the area already. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Biker. I have 3 more persons that have voiced their opposition. They are welcome to speak if they'd like. Otherwise, they can remain in their seats, and their opposition is noted. Is there anybody that we missed that would like to speak? Sure, please come up.
Hi, my name is Kevin Spicer. I'm also a resident a little bit further south, closer to 75th Avenue and Greenway. And you're going to hear a lot of oppositions about traffic and the height. But the 2 biggest things that I wanted to comment on is that I had previous conversations with Kirsten Hall, your development director, and who promised me no more apartments in this area. The big concern is jobs, commerce, development, bringing those businesses here, and not another 200 units to suck the resources that we're already short on. Our restaurants around here, businesses around here are already at capacity. Our street, 75th Avenue, is already at capacity, and now we're adding more people and less commerce, less jobs. He mentions 2,000 square feet of retail, and then as if that's going to bring in, a good amount of jobs into the area, and that's just certainly not the case. So those are obviously two big concerns that I have, is that if we're really truly trying to develop the P83 to bring in commerce, business, employment, and whatnot, then why are we choking it even more with residences in that area, especially an area that already has 3 major complexes that feed into Paradise Lane, and 3 of them use 1 stoplight. Almost 1,000 units, like they said, will use 1 stoplight, and that's an incredible amount of traffic in one area. But I'm all for developing that corner with something like they said, restaurants, or something that's going to bring jobs and commerce and retail to the area. And when one of your own development directors promises no more apartments in the area, that they want jobs, and then and we hear this, it's certainly disheartening to the residences in the area. But I'm sure there will be more opposition, coming forward from this.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Does the applicant wish to speak?
Chairman, also members of the commission, I'll be brief. I just want to touch on a couple of the comments. The first of which is traffic. Traffic is a constant, and traffic is something that's going to come with any type of development. And this is a vacant site, so something will develop here. So the question then becomes, what is the most reasonable use of the site that's going to have the least impact on traffic? Because there will be some, and you've heard from your own traffic engineer that of the economically viable uses of this site, residential is the one of those that's going to generate the least traffic. The current hotel development generates more commercial. If this were to develop as a grocery store or a Whole Foods, as you heard from some of the commenters, it would generate up to 3 times as much traffic. So there was a comment about safety should be one of the main concerns. Safety is one of the main concerns, and that's precisely why there is a traffic review process with your city. Don't take it from me, take it from your city's traffic engineer who's paid for, or whose salary is paid with taxpayer dollars. As far as the height is concerned, again, I need to emphasize the fact that this is, with the exception of that architectural roof point at the intersection, this building is no taller and is in fact 5 feet shorter than the hotel that is currently approved. And as you saw from our elevations, there were some concerns about privacy, and I really have 2 comments on that. The first of which is that the vast majority of our southern facade, which looks towards the neighborhood, will be the parking structure, which is screened. There are, from a proportional standpoint, very few upper-level windows that would actually look towards the neighborhood. There were far more if that hotel development were built that would actually be looking towards there. But more importantly, these concerns about privacy, and not to in any way diminish them, privacy concerns are legitimate in just about every circumstance. But typically we hear these kinds of concerns about privacy with respect to neighboring developments, and by that I mean ones that are right next door, and we're talking about setbacks, and whether that setback is 20 feet or 30 feet or 40 feet. In this case, we have almost 600 feet from us to the nearest single-family backyard, and at that distance, a human face is indiscernible. And so the point being that we are limiting the number of windows, particularly with respect to the current approved development, at a very significant distance. There were some comments about soil stability. So as you know, and as I'm sure your Community Development Director, Chris Hawkes, would confirm, engineering is one of the first things that you have to prove up before you can turn any dirt, to ensure that the soil is stable, to ensure that the soil is properly compacted, and to ensure that it can support any development that goes on it. And so I'm here to assure you that once vertical construction were to commence on this site, that question has already been answered. As far as the concentration of multifamily, there were some comments about how many multifamily projects are in this area. That's very much by design, and the city has actually encouraged it that way. That's why the mixed-use community district is in this area, to concentrate density into areas where it is appropriate. And so that's precisely why this site has been designated this way, and that's why we're developing it this way. And I guess the final comment that I'll make had to do with the landscaping and the proposed landscaping not being consistent with either the P83 or the surrounding developments. The landscape architect on this project is actually the very same one Norris designed that did the Opus project across the street. And with that continuity ensures that there will be a consistent theme that goes not only across the street, but flowing into the P83 district for everything to look consistent and spectacular. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any additional follow-up questions that you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Sorry, I gotta change my screen here. Did somebody request? I didn't even see. Commissioner Waitman.
Thank you. So wonderful presentation, and I'm definitely thankful that a lot of residents came out to stress their concern. I just want to assure, because I kind of want to go back, and this is a point that you made, because obviously right now as my wheels are turning, the first thing that I'm thinking about is we're talking about these jobs that we want to bring to the city, right? Well, when we are talking about jobs, individuals need a place to live. Most young professionals, working professionals, they won't be ready to rent, right? So we get all this, you know, businesses, and we get commerce. People need places to live. And of course, my husband and I, we love Peoria as well because it's rural and same things. We love that, right? But this is just my comment. And once again, my personal way of looking at this and my personal view. If we're going to develop as the city is growing, I want to go back to your comment that you made, and maybe you can give some clarification on the projection on the job market and what is going to be happening and how fast we possibly would grow. We're going to need places to live. And my concern is just that if we continue to take a stance of not wanting to build multi-purpose family homes, me, myself, I am a city girl, knowing that we have residents in all different situations, not every resident is going to be able to buy and come here and buy. And we have beautiful homes. My husband and I were blessed. We're young, working professionals. But if we're gonna get, bring money into the city, have commerce, there needs to be places to house these individuals. And when I'm thinking of this business development and I'm seeing how beautiful it's built, I think it's a beautiful building. Thank God I'm not from Cuba or anywhere. I'd be offended. So I think that we have to think about that. Where are we going to live? I know what a struggle it was for me as a young professional. Rentals would be something that would be very interesting. I definitely see that you guys tried to make this high luxury and try to target a specific type of community, a working professional, a starting family. And I think that as the city develops, eventually we are going to have to build higher than 2-3 stories if we're going to be the best city to live in by AZ Big Media, that is. These are the things that we're going to need. So do you mind clarifying a bit on the study that you guys did in regards to how we're going to be growing? Because I think you made a comment the first time you came and spoke about the jobs it would provide, and I think about how fast you think the city would grow and how this project would match up or kind of bridge the gap in that regard, right?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, also Commissioner Waitman. Absolutely. And when you think about, mixed-use development, a lot of times we think about mixed-use development as being a single development, that it's one building that's got multifamily, it's got retail, it's got office, whatever it may be. But oftentimes we need to think about mixed use in a larger sense, and that's really what the mixed-use community district is intended to encourage, that you're looking at a mix of uses in an area in order to create the kind of synergies that allow people to live in an area, work in an area, dine in an area, go to a ball game in an area. And so in the P83 district right now, you've got obviously Peoria Sports Complex, so you've got entertainment, you've got the Harkins Movie Theater, you've got lots of restaurants. What's coming is Stadium Point, which is obviously been done in the partnership with the city of Peoria, which is going to have a lot of commercial office, which will have a lot of jobs that goes in it. And particularly when you're looking at sort of those entry-level professional jobs and mid-level professional jobs, those are the kinds of folks who maybe aren't yet in a position to buy a home and maybe want to live close enough where they can ride a bike. This is precisely the type of tenant that this development is targeting. And I mean, like you, I can speak for myself. My wife and I bought our first home when we were 34, and we're both, professionals with doctorate level degrees. And so We rented right up until we had our first kid. And so this type of development is precisely not only, again, what is called for by the city's plans, but what the market is asking for in this area.
Thank you. I think it's a wonderful presentation and a wonderful building. I do, of course, want to give deference to the things that were said. And once again, one thing that really helped me out is that we have now addressed that as far as privacy concerns that we're speaking of, the parking garage would be facing towards majority of the properties where residents have these concerns, or I just kind of want to know how that's set up, because of course, people have young kids, they want privacy in their backyard. I love the privacy in my backyard, so could we talk about that one more time, because that is the parking garage that we've
Yes.
seen, correct?
And so I think Cody's trying to go back. There should be a slide that's got a 3D elevation on it. So I would say the two things that make up the majority of the southern facade of the building, and really you can see them here, so you're just kind of have to imagine it unless we can get back to that 3D rendering of the slide. There we go. So most of the building windows face either internally in that courtyard, which is where the pool area is, which again takes away some of the building face right there. So that's more area where you don't have windows facing south that you otherwise would, is where you've got that huge notch cut out for the amenity in the pool area. And then the majority of the facade is taken up by the parking structure, which again will be screened with architectural materials, whether it's vertical metal fins or horizontal fins to break it up. And so when you're looking at it, whether it's during the day or at night, you're certainly not seeing cars or people. And as a result of both the parking structure, just the way the building is oriented, and then also the amenity area cutting out another significant portion of that southern facade, there are actually very few windows, at a high enough vantage point to even see a backyard along that southern elevation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Waitman. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I assume that the property owner evaluated all other types of uses that could have gone here besides apartments?
Yes, so Sub 4 is currently under contract to purchase the property. Obviously, with most of these deals, they don't close on the property until the entitlements have been approved. But with this property, yes, when it goes out to bid, the land seller is obviously looking to get the most value that they can out of their land. And the highest and best use of this land, the suitors that were willing to pay the most for the property were multifamily developers. Not just Sub 4, but the other ones who were not successful in getting the bid to get this property under contract.
Gotcha. And as far as one more question on the soil stability that keeps getting brought up. My assumption would be no builder is going to, or no owner is going to invest in a property, multi-million-dollar property, if there's unstable soil, number one. And I would assume you couldn't even get insurance if it wasn't stable. Your insurance company is going to demand that. Is that a correct assumption?
Chairman, also, Commissioner Nelson, you are absolutely correct. But I would say more importantly, you're not going to get a permit from the city of Peoria.
And that too. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not assuming something incorrect. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Hutchinson.
Thanks, Chair. All right, so I'm going to revisit the question I asked of the city staff, and keeping this elevation on, and I'm in agreement. With the obviously the traffic studies are done by professionals, not by volunteer commissioners that sit up here and at least pretend like we know what we're doing. I'm going to go, though, back to, with this, considering this elevation, and if there's such a low impact and low traffic expectation being generated by this plant, by this installation, it would seem to me like, you would, by making that a fire department access only on 75th Avenue, you're going to take away any prospect of traffic driving back and forth in front of the pool area. Like all the traffic would go and around the building and dump out onto Paradise Lane. We're talking about a very, very low impact of traffic. why don't we just make a concession and cut off access onto 75th Avenue, just have everyone go out onto 75th, Paradise Lane? It seems to be like at least trying to work with the residents and giving them a concession for, some of the concerns on, 75th Avenue is a disaster. I don't care what traffic expert, I'm sorry. 75th Avenue sucked. I mean, it's a terrible road. And people do drive like it's a freeway on that road. And I do think it's a recipe for disaster, especially coming in and out of that, I always say it wrong, Tierra Bueno. And maybe even consider a traffic signal at Tierra Bueno and have, I know it's in close proximity to Paradise Lane, but as my fellow commissioners are mentioning about the technology that's being installed into traffic control, maybe something can happen where we can consider the safety of the residents existing and give them a little something about what, because the privacy issue, while it's a concern, it's really in fact, it's a little bit better now without, in comparison to the hotel that's slated for that property. I know I said a lot, but what are your thoughts on that, on the fire department access only on 75th Avenue? I mean, like I said, no traffic in front of your pool area.
Chairman, also Commissioner Hutchinson, here's what I will commit to. I will commit to you that we will give it a serious look, because what I can't do from this podium without speaking to the client, without speaking to our traffic engineer, is commit to something that could be detrimental to the development. And again, I don't pretend to know how that stuff works. I leave it to the professionals to determine what is the most appropriate circulation pattern, where the appropriate entrances and exits are. So what I can commit to you is that we will give it a hard look. The representative from the developers here, we can discuss, and if it is something we can do without having a detrimental impact on the development, then it's something we'll do. But it's not something that I can commit to from the dais and be doing my job.
If I could just follow that up with one more quick statement. As far as the multi-housing and the mixed-use properties, I actually do. I think this is a really nice design. I think it's a good impact, coming in from that direction into what is to be Stadium Point. I mean, it is the jobs are going to be generated not just in this area, but regionally. We do not have housing stock even close to what's needed for what's coming in the next decade in the regional job growth area. I would prefer a little bit more concentration into Peoria for these jobs that are coming, but regionally, I think the job market is just incredible in the next decade, and I think more and more mixed-use projects, especially infill like this, I think is good for everybody. But I would appreciate you working with the residents. They make very valid points.
Chair, also Commissioner Hutchinson, I agree with you, and in addition to committing to really giving that an earnest look, we'll commit to continuing to communicate with the folks that were here and see if there's anything we can do. I genuinely am committing to that we will continue to communicate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Grice.
I would just like to say to the community that what we're looking at is the zoning of the site. There's additional meetings that are held for the actual site plan, architectural review, and that's a different scope than what we're looking at here. What is being presented is a lesser use than what's entitled right now. And so the use that they're proposing is a benefit to the community, to the residents, because it's a lesser use, and it alleviates some of the traffic, it alleviates some of the privacy issues. It is more beneficial to the community from the concerns that you've raised. So it's keeping in perspective that this is just the zoning part of the process, and there's additional pieces that are done to address additional issues on the site plan, where the parking is, and those types of issues. So I'd just like to say thank you to the developer for presenting that. I think it's a very nice concept, but I know that this is zoning. So thank you, and I guess that's it there.
Thanks, Commissioner Grice. I concur. This is consistent with the previous two approved zonings. It's consistent with the voter-approved general plan. It is consistent with motions and actions from City Council. Appreciate your input. And with that, we'll close the open discussion.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any comments at this point for staff or amongst ourselves? Seeing none, do we have a motion? I think we're all looking for the
Case,
item number.
zoning case.
Zoning number up on the screen. So for all these comments, I'm going to make a motion, just a quick comment. I want to thank the residents for coming out. You're making your voices heard. You're showing up. You're not just sitting back hoping for the best. Appreciate the involvement. Love that. Obviously, I don't know what the decision is going to be tonight, but whatever it is, you'll have another opportunity before the City Council. But I think for the reasons mentioned tonight, it's less traffic. I'm sorry, if you put a grocery store or a gas station, you're going to have much more traffic than you have right now from this proposed project. The soil stability issue, don't see that as an issue. Conforms to our general plan. I think we have an obligation as commissioners to uphold the request of citizenry who voted for our general plan, which designated this site for this purpose. I think we need to honor that. I think it's an attractive project. I appreciate the applicant's commitment to continue working with the residents. Thank you for that, and we'll hold you to that. For those reasons, I'm going to recommend approval of case Z20-09 to the City Council, subject to the attached conditions of approval in Exhibit 1.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Commissioners, please vote. Motion approves unanimously. Thank you. We will proceed to, excuse me. For our reports from staff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, a couple of reports from staff this evening. First, I would like to give a heads up. We are underway on the 2021 Major General Plan amendment cycle. In particular, we have two city-initiated amendments that we are looking to bring forward for consideration. They are incredibly minor in nature. The first one is a text update to primarily realign what we have within our chapters because the fire medical department has recently received reaccreditation. The second item in particular is a map update to the land use plan to modify and recognize formally our city recharge fields. Currently they are designated as a residential disposition. They're not going to be used for that. They're very important to the city. Recharge and water is incredibly important at this point in time. So we're going to preserve those into a public, quasi-public use. And we've had some modifications to roadways that we would like to update because as we move forward with development, things always change. So it's more of a housekeeping nature. So those two amendments are being proposed. Wanted to let you know the first event that is a key one is July 22nd. We send out a notice to the agencies and the 60-day review process begins. That's where we transmit a full package out to everybody with an acronym. We post this online for our residents and so forth to make comments known. In August, we will have two open houses. What I would do is encourage folks to check back on our website. We are going to be posting those. We will be sending out notices as such. Primarily, we are looking at doing a one in person with possible a virtual option at the same time. The second one would be doing virtual as well. Finally, we would be coming back before Planning and Zoning Commission. The first meeting for consideration is October 7th. That is the remote, so we're just introducing the items and taking public testimony. The next would be October 21st. That's when we ask commission for a formal recommendation. And then we would be proceeding forward to November 9th, 2021. So just want to keep these dates in mind, and for those who may be online viewing it. So please check back. We would encourage folks to check back on the planning website within the next couple of weeks when we have those open house dates available for them. The next item is the 2021 Western States Planning Conference. In particular, wanted to make a note that this combines our annual Arizona Planning Conference and the Western Planning Conference together. It's being held August 22nd through the 25th. There are 40 sessions on a diverse range of topics, and in particular, what they do have is the conference tracks noted below. So policies that unify, 7 generations, and that's looking ahead. So not only thinking about ourselves, but into the future, the 7-generation concept. Healthy by design, we've heard that before in the general plan. So it's continuing on and growing in all different forms. Putting people first, and how do we build consensus in that regard, and thinking outside of the box. Kind of a particular one that I wanted to throw at the bottom. It's not just for planners. This is not a planning nerd conference. This is for commissioners or anybody who's interested. We would encourage also economic development folks, people who just have an interest. Transportation is a key interest as well. If you are curious, early bird sign up ends today. You still have a little bit of time. If not, let us know if you do have an interest, and we may be able to accommodate. So with that, Commission, we have one last item, and that would be reports from staff. So wanted to let you know our August 5th meeting is canceled. The next one would be August 19th. And that's all I have. Mr. Hawkes, would you like to add anything?
Nothing further. Thank you, Lauren.
Adding my calendar to that. Okay, I think I skipped any calls to public and non-agenda items, seeing no more public here and no speaker request forms. I suspect there's no public non-agenda items. Do we have any commission updates? Nope. Seeing none, I adjourn this meeting.